What is up, everybody? Welcome back. A new edition of the 515 Sports Podcast. Same guys as always, but same vibes as always, but a little different format like we talked about in the last episode. Just kind of mixing it up, seeing how this goes. First try of this, but man, we're excited for this.
Oh, I'm super excited. Now we're streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. If you don't follow us on YouTube, or subscribe to YouTube, you can search up 515 Sports Podcast. I think we've talked about this, and we'll just mention it again. There will probably be a lot more content on the YouTube side of things versus our actual podcast stream. We'll still have our regular podcast schedule that we have, but a lot more different things that we can do with this YouTube capabilities.
Yeah, and yeah, Brock said it best, right? So we're just trying to see new ways we can do things and see promote our content a little bit better and just kind of see what happens. But yeah, I guess if you got comments, feedback, whatever, we're open to it as always.
For sure, for sure. And let's get right into it. I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the state of Iowa and more specifically their college basketball this year. And you look at the women's side of things, and it seems like every team in the state of Iowa has been very competitive this year. Of course, University of Iowa is probably the name brand when you talk about the teams going on, and especially in the news recently. Good Lord, you take a court storming a little too far, and all of a sudden everybody wants to talk about whether or not someone flopped. Which, if you do we want to talk about this Caitlin Clark situation, or do we want to
I mean,
not?
I think
Because I
it's
think it's
interesting.
nothing. I think it's nothing really.
I agree. I don't think it's too much, but I think it's interesting that Matt Painter, Purdue coach, came out after Nebraska game, I believe, and basically said like we got to figure this out. It's not up to par. Like everything that's happening here, it's setting up for something bad to happen, and then lo and behold, a couple weeks later, Caitlin Clark gets absolutely decked by fan running on the court, whether it's flop or not. Can't have it, right? Just can't have it. So,
Yes. Yeah.
um, it's interesting to me that Painter brought that up, and he made a good comment about how I think he said the sophomores, freshmen, and juniors have never lost on the road and not had the court stormed. So obviously it's a thing, right? And obviously they're a very good program, so it happens more to them. But Iowa's at that stage now, where shoot, they got people making memorabilia from when Ohio State beat them and selling it,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you're at that point where it's like we got to figure this out. I don't think it's a massive issue. It's not a one. If you had to list issues of the NCAA and things like that, I don't think that's at the top by any means. But like we both said, just can't have that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it was a great game. It sucks that this off the court situation is kind of taking away from what the game actually was. Ohio State played a really good game, able to end up getting the victory in overtime against Iowa, put up 100 on Iowa, which in overtime that helps a little bit. But I think this further emphasizes the issue that the University of Iowa may have with their women's team, is that it is kind of led by one player. And I think Caitlin Clark is now 0-3 when she scores 45 points. So she's able to put up points. It's the team around her that's been the issue, if they ever have issues. Again, only 3 losses this year, so not really a big deal right now, but something to keep an eye on.
I think it's interesting too when you talk about that team because I think there's two ways you can go about it, right? You can be, oh, we're going to stop Clark and see what happens, right? Or if we hold her under 20, are we going to win? You can take that route, or you can take the route I think Ohio State maybe took of if I think Marshall, Martin, and Stokey combined average about like 30. So if you think, hey, can we hold them under 30? Will we win? I think they had 20, 21 maybe combined in that win for Ohio State. So now they still had 90 some, right? So there is that aspect. But I think those are the two ways you can probably play Iowa. Either try to control Clark, which is proving to be difficult, or try to control the others. And I think Ohio State tried to control the others, and obviously it helps when you score 100 points.
And when you have a dominant post or a dominant post game in general, you don't need to have just one dominant post. You're setting yourself up for success against this University of Iowa team that lost a great center in Sonano last year to graduation. And McMahon was absolutely cooking inside with 33 points and 12 rebounds. So, two other losses that we've seen, the inside game has been the issue, in my opinion, for the Hawkeyes. And I'm not giving up. Again, I by no means am I pushing the panic button on the Hawks because I mean they're still having a very good season and still ranked in the top 5. And I don't know. The inside game is going to be an issue if they come up against a team with a good post. Like we've seen that with when they played Kansas State in the Oyoko Lee. But yeah, the lack of help holding the 3 players you mentioned under 30 as well as a dominant post game sets yourself up for success against these Hawkeyes.
Yeah, you're right. It's just an interesting route, right? I think you said it best, right? There's been 2 games that they've lost where it's the inside has kind of hurt them, but I think Ohio State too is a very very sneaky good team. I think I at the beginning of the year they were ranked pretty high, and then they fell a little bit. Now they're back up there. I think 12 this week. But they got players. I think JC Sheldon honestly might be one of the most athletic players I've seen in a long time, and she does a lot of things that some other players can't do. And Celeste Taylor was Defensive Player of the Year in the ACC last year, and so bring her on, and obviously Cody McMahon, and you have a pretty deep bench, right? So I think Ohio State's a pretty solid team. Like if I'm Iowa, like you said, I'm not worried. I'm not pressing the panic button. That's why basketball's fun, in my opinion, right? Nobody goes undefeated. You lose, right? So how do you bounce back from that? Where do you make improvements? What did you see if you're an Iowa fan from that game, or even on the coaching staff, players, whatever, that we lost because of X, Y, and Z? Obviously, you look at defense, right? If you score 90, probably should win that game. But if you give up 100, you're not, right? So, we talk about it a lot. I think you can hold teams as low as you want on defense, but if you can't put the ball in the hole, like you're not going to win. Well, this is one of those cases where it's the other way around, right? So I think it's interesting to see what they do defensively. They're playing a lot of 2-3 zone in the back half of that Ohio State game. Not sure if that's the answer, but we'll see where they go from there. And like we said, man, Ohio State's a good team at home. Not too worried about the Hawks.
Yeah, not worried about them at all. And when talking about other teams in the state of Iowa that have been playing really well, we'll touch on the Cyclones, but I wanted to touch on the Drake Bulldogs, who are still, I think, undefeated in conference play and put up 107 in regulation against Murray State last weekend. So this Bulldogs team, you look at some of their games, they've put up over 100 multiple times. They put up 90 against the Hawkeyes earlier in the year, ended up losing that game, of course, but still, this Bulldogs team has been really fun to watch if you love watching high scoring basketball.
Yeah, and they win many different ways too, right? And
Yep.
they basically have the same. Obviously, they lost a couple players, but man, they basically have the same team they had last year. And last year they almost beat Louisville, and they obviously made the tournament, right? And they almost beat Louisville in the first round. So, man, they got good players. I think Dinnebeer's on like the mid-major player of the year watch or something, and Grace Berg, she's been hooping there for a couple 3 years now, maybe, and she just gets buckets. I think she had 30 maybe the other night. So, yeah, if you're like that game, right? If you're scoring over 100 and you win, obviously give up 98. I think Murray State was at the top of the valley too. So, that was a big game, big game for the Bulldogs there, and they got a pretty good team. Honestly, it's tough because you're in the Missouri Valley, right? You're not a 2-team league, but if they make the tournament, man, they could win a game. They could maybe win 2 games.
They could win 2.
Yeah.
And really with the state of college basketball in general, not just necessarily the women's game, there seems to be a lot more parity when it comes to competition wise. And it's great for teams that are in the Valley that are in a one big league, because they would get, if they win the conference tournament, depending on the record, of course, they're going to get a good draw and they could potentially beat a Power 5 team pretty easily. I like this Drake team against a lot of Power 5 teams that are probably going to make the tournament.
Yeah, I agree. And then, they've been having such a good year. Wherever they end up in the Valley, right, they'll be a top seed. If you win the tournament, which ideally you would. Obviously, Murray State's a good team. Like, there's some other good teams there. But if, let's say you do win the tournament, you're going to be a decent seed, right? You're not going to be the 15, 14. Like, you'll have a shot. Honestly, you could be 12 again. You could be 11, right? Like, you're going to be in that range where you can win a couple.
Yeah, and I completely agree. One thing I have circled on my schedule for sure is their game at Northern Iowa that I think is next week, because Drake has had issues with this Northern Iowa team over the last couple years. I mean, I think both games last year were off of game winners off of Maya McDermott, so maybe the Bulldogs kryptonite? Who knows? Maybe they're going to get over the hump this year. I think they do over that Northern Iowa team. Northern Iowa's good. Don't get me wrong. They play some good basketball up in Cedar Falls, but I just don't think, like you mentioned, I don't think you can stop Berg and Denbier with that duo right there. This team has been really hard to defeat, and in a conference that is battling for, like you said, maybe one good bid, and then at best probably another team that's a 15, 16 seed.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
Bulldogs team isn't taking any nights off.
right. I really think every year, right, the Valley pretty much is always one bid league, right? I guess before while we're on Drake, different side of the team. Do you think the men's team could make the tournament? Do you think they could win the Valley?
So, okay, so a lot of people know I grew up as an Iowa State / Northern Iowa guy and love watching some Northern Iowa basketball. I don't know what's with Ben Jacobson. First of all, shout out him for becoming the most
Yeah, shout
winningest
out.
coach in Missouri Valley Conference history. But I don't know what's with him and like not playing good in the non-conference and then all of a sudden like turning it up in the conference play. But I really like this Northern Iowa team recently. Of course, Drake I think is the team to beat right now. And hey, they got Drake coming up on their schedule. If you beat Drake, that's a statement win for a Northern Iowa team that I feel like right now is kind of being slept on. Again, they're 12-8, so they would have to win the conference tournament to make it. I think Drake could like could make the tournament without winning the conference tournament, if that makes sense. Because I feel
Okay.
like
Yeah.
I feel like with their like, let's say they finished the regular season with like 2-3 conference losses, they'd be over 20 wins and only 4 or 5 losses. Like, I feel like you could make an argument for a team that almost beat Miami last year in the first round to make the tournament because it's basically the same team. If anything, they've gotten better through the transfer portal and the addition of guys that they've been able to get. I think right now they're still the favorite to win the conference, but don't sleep on Ben Jacobson and those Northern Iowa Panthers because for some reason when conference play hits, his teams hit another level for whatever reason, when in reality they should just be consistent throughout the whole year.
Right. And I think too, this is like totally off topic, but you and I, right, we're talking about Ben Jacobson. I just found out recently that the GOAT Seth Tuttle is one of the assistants at
Oh yeah.
you and I. I didn't know, like I feel like I maybe knew that, but it got refreshed in my brain. And I just remember watching him hoop back in the day and be like, "Is Seth Tuttle, man? You want to talk about like a random guy that you're sitting around with your buddies? Like, remember this guy, Seth Tuttle? He used to
Seth
get
Tuttle. Dude was
buckets.
a dog. Those Northern Iowa teams and like the 2015, 2016 around that range were really, really entertaining to watch. And honestly, I don't know if I told you this. Maybe I've mentioned this on a podcast at a certain point. But since that A&M game where they blew it, we don't like talking about
Yeah,
that
yeah,
game
yeah.
that much. But since that game, Northern Iowa's been known to blow games in big moments. I mean, they had a game. Let me look up their schedule this year. They were in some early season tournament, and they were up against a very decent program. Texas Tech. Texas Tech is not necessarily a powerhouse this year.
They're ranked though.
But that's what I'm saying. So, like, they lost by 2 against Texas Tech, and they had the lead, I think, with, like, 2 or 3 minutes left. So, like, Northern Iowa's kind of been known for blowing games since that season, and if Jacobson can get over the late game struggles that they've had over the last couple years, maybe things would change, but, no, it's Seth Tuttle, man. That guy, Jesperson, Wes
West
Washburn
Wash. Yep, that's where I
is
was going
one of
next.
those
That's where I was going
guys
next.
that you would be like, "How is this guy just balling?"
Yep,
Dude dominated against North Carolina
yep.
in Cedar Falls that one year. Oh my gosh,
Well,
that guy
and
was so
he
fun to
was
watch.
there forever. Like,
Hmm.
I felt like he was there forever, and every year they had a good team, right? And I think you can talk basketball. That I think having a good point guard like that, obviously, I think it's a great example, right? They didn't always have the best guys, but man, they were good every single year he was there.
I feel like you could have given him an opportunity in the NBA. I really do. Like he could have been one of those guys that oh, who was the guy for the Pelicans that was absolutely upsetting people on the defensive end of the ball?
Jose
Jose.
Alvarado.
Yes. That's the guy that he just reminds me of. If you would have given him a chance, I think he could have made some noise in the NBA. But no, I really think this Bulldogs team, getting back to what we were talking about, is the heavy favorite in the conference, and I truly think that they will probably end up winning at least the regular season of the conference, if not the conference tournament. Um, DeVries will win player of the year for the conference again. I this team is just fun to watch. I really like Brody down low. The dude
Yeah,
is just a big body, 6'10", 275 around that range, just bodying people in the post. And I love the old school post play. So no, I think the Bulldogs do make the tournament, and this is the year that they'll get a first round win. I really do think that the Bulldogs will actually get a first round win this year.
I could see it, right? If they make the tournament, both sides, men's and women's, right? I could see them winning a game there if they make the tournament. And man, I think we talk about the state of Iowa hoops, right? Man, what was that? I think who tweeted? Somebody tweeted it out. Like there was one week where everybody won, like both sides, right? I don't think there was not a loss on the
Oh yeah,
college
yeah, yeah,
side.
yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah, it was like, oh, let me look up that tweet. But yeah, all the state of Iowa teams were winning, which was
Yeah,
it's a great sign.
and on both sides, like men's and women's. I think it was Iowa men's and women's, Iowa State men's and women's, UNI, and Drake men's and women's. Like I think everybody won the entire week, which obviously there's there's only what four programs at D1 in the state of Iowa, and some places, California, whatever. Like you have so many, but still, like a lot of the people in Iowa, not everyone, obviously, but you got a lot of Iowa people hooping on those teams, and I think that speaks values to the state of Iowa's basketball.
And I know we've talked about this. Oh, just found the tweet. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 0 in the week.
That's crazy.
But I know I've talked to you about this off the pod, but with going back to the women's side, Iowa State, I don't think they're in as good of a situation as they are in now if the transfers didn't happen. I don't know why, and maybe I'm completely just crazy, and I just want to make it feel like right now we're better than we could have been with the team that we were going to have. But Danae Fritz left, Lexi Janarski left. Credit to Lexi, she left and she's balling in North Carolina. Like
Yeah.
she's playing really well. Also had a couple other players transferred who one of them was a grad transfer in Morgan Kane, so she probably wasn't going to she wasn't eligible to play with Iowa State next year anyways. And then Espen Miller McGraw went to Montana for her extra year as well. But with that, Iowa State was able to go in the transfer portal themselves and get Hannah Bellinger, who I think is a huge asset to this team. And how she played in that Baylor game where they upset the Baylor Bears, I don't know where she got that from. She just went into full dog mode because, like, she's most of the year she's been a 3-point shooter. I remember a drive in the fourth quarter where she was just bodied into someone, just threw up a layup and it went in. I was like, where was that coming from all year?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that addition, right? So they have a lot of freshmen, obviously.
Yes.
But I think bringing her in as like a veteran presence, right? Obviously, she hasn't been around the program all that long, but just this 1 year, having played a lot of college basketball, no matter what level it's at, right? Just playing a lot of college basketball, being able to just kind of, hey, let's relax a little bit here. We got a lot of young people out here, and obviously having Emily back helps a ton, anyways. But you have that presence where you have two older guards and everybody else is kind of young, but hey, we can just like chill a little bit. Like, let's bring the ball up, settle down, run the offense, do things that way. I think helps so much. I think bringing her in, like you said, is an underrated move, honestly, just because she's played so much basketball. She's been good for so long, and now she's helping lead the Cyclones.
And I mean, I think there may be one player on the roster that's not a senior or a freshman, if I'm right. I could be completely wrong. But that's crazy to even think about, especially with how good that they've been able to play right now, because there's moments where you got 5 freshmen out on the court and it's a decent lineup. So
Yeah.
the future is bright with this women's Cyclones team. And a couple months ago before the season, nobody really knew what the future looked like for this program because it was kind of looked at as a rebuilding year, if we're being completely honest. And now all of a sudden it's Ooh, maybe we can make some noise in the Big 12 this year.
Well, and if this is your rebuilding year, right?
Ooh,
You
I'll
are
take it.
living the dream.
Yes, and I mean, a lot of people have mentioned it, and I'm pretty sure you would agree with me. This might be Finley's like best coaching job, like being able to rebuild this team so quickly. Not necessarily rebuild, just retool and reshape it in a way that they've been able to get wins against some very good Big 12 opponents.
Yeah, I don't know, I think he's done a great job throughout his time there of like developing players and um you've had so many great players come through there when he's been there, right? Even going way, way back, right? Like,
Oh yeah,
you've had so many great players come through there. Recently, you've had, Bridget and Ashley, obviously, but a lot of those people he's kind of developed, right? And if that's his thing, which he's been great at developing people, think about what he's gonna do with these cats that he's got right now, right?
and you can
That's
see
5 of them.
spurts.
Oh
It's
yeah,
crazy. Like, of course, Audie Crooks and Addie Brown are performing at great levels already as freshmen, and I think both of them are going to be competing for freshman of the year in the Big 12. Um, but then you got the other freshmen. I mean, Bristow has showed some spurts as being a great rebounder, being able to get inside as well. And no, I really am looking forward to the future of this program.
yeah, and I think the interesting thing about the freshmen this year, like they're all very good at different things. Like nobody's really the same, right? Like Kelsey shoots the ball really well. Jalen's kind of longer and she can drive and shoot, right? Audie's just inside destroying people. Addie's kind of like Bridget Ashley 3.0. And then AJ just clamps up, right? She can run
Yep.
the offense and she'll just clamp up. Like you have nobody does the same thing, which in my opinion, that's how you build a team, right? And I think that's why they've been so good this year. And but I think that's also why he's been so good there for so long.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think this team could make a decent run in the tournament this year. Who knows? Maybe they'll make a Cinderella run in the Big 12 tournament this year as well because they've been able to show that they can beat some high level teams already. Um,
Yeah.
but moving over to the men's side, of course, Iowa State kind of building off of what they've been doing last couple years. Made the tournament, made a Sweet 16 run in TJ's first season, and right now you can start to see that he's starting to build glue, kind of a foundation for what his program stands for. We all kind of knew that he was kind of a guy that loved defense. He is an offensive guy too. He loves some offense when he can get it. But man, the amount of scrappy players that he has, and credit to them on Saturday. Taman Lipsey was out, and when you're losing your point guard, and especially a point guard leader that has probably been the best player for Iowa State this year consistently, and going into TCU and upsetting TCU after losing by 20 against BYU. It's sometimes great to be consistently inconsistent on in those situations, but I am a little worried when it comes to the consistency of this team because losing the BYU the way they did was not necessarily a good look, but a great bounce back win on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think BYU good program too, like good
Oh
team.
yeah,
I don't think it's a thing where, we talk about with the Iowa women too, right? It's basketball, right? You're gonna lose, and a lot of times it's not how you lose, but how you respond to how you lose, in my opinion. And I think, man, no Lipsy, you go in there. Let's be honest, nobody knew what to expect, right? You have
yep.
no idea what to expect. Were your hopes high? Honestly, probably not, right? If you're ride and die cyclone guy, you're probably like, well, see what happens. And if you get that effort, man, now we got to work on that end of game stuff a little bit. But
Yeah, thank God they
hey,
were up
got
as
the
big
dub.
as they were. Good
No
thing
kidding.
they were up as big as they were, only one by one. And I mean, I don't know if you saw, but like I think the over under hit based off of that last shot that was put
Oh,
in
that's
that had
crazy.
nothing to do with the game.
That, ugh, yeah,
But
that's a bad beat. That is a horrible beat.
uh and I told some people that I sit around in Hilton, same section. We all, you build a community with the people that you sit by every
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
And I told them Keyshawn Gilbert reminds me so much DeAndre Kane. So
I was gonna say the same thing.
you
I was gonna
gotta
say the
be
same thing.
okay with the random drives to the hoop
Yep,
where he throws up
yep,
something random
yep. Or
because
the random turnover. You're like, what are you
yes,
doing? Yeah,
yes, it's going to happen no matter what. It's going to happen every game because he makes up for it with the other plays that he
yeah,
makes on the court. And I
yeah.
really like Gilbert. on this team. Milan, I mean, is probably one of the most not talked about freshmen. I mean, if we're being honest, this is a weird year of college basketball. I don't think there's a lot of
Yeah.
people talking about certain players specifically anymore. And some Iowa State fans may hate me for saying this. Caitlin Clark's the biggest name in college basketball right now.
Yeah, I would
It
agree.
does not matter what your gender is.
Yeah,
She
I would
is.
agree. I would agree.
But Milan, he's man, baby Dirk, man. I love watching some turnaround faders. Honestly, I think he's more consistent in the turnaround fade game than he is from shooting from three,
I
which is kind of
think
crazy to think about.
I think you made a good point. Or like, I don't. Obviously, we don't know what the future holds, but man, this might be the most Otzelberger basketball team that could ever exist. Like, you don't really have one guy that's like, oh, this is the guy. You just got a bunch of dogs that just go out there, play hard. Like, I just laugh thinking about that. Like that rotation of like big guys they go, right? Ward, uh, Rob Jones, like whoever you want to put in there, right? Trey King, like Jamarin Watson. You just got all these dudes that are like basically the same version of each other the entire time. They just go in there and just play their absolute tail off, rebound, just play hard. And it's like you don't get a break, right? Sometimes you get that first guy out. It's like, okay, different type of guy. Nope. Like basically clones. It's just all the clones of each other, just spawning in, just doing the exact same thing. It's awesome.
It's great to watch. And I mean, you look at this team and they lose a couple guys in the post play next year due to the graduation. I mean, I think Ward, King, and Rob all graduate. And Omaha fits right in that. And I know he only played 6 minutes on Saturday, but the minutes that he played were some good minutes for a guy that is trying to find a position in the rotation. And a lot of people are always asking questions about him, but no, I feel confident that Omaha is going to fit in with this program. I think someone said that he's nowhere near Marcus Fizer, but like people need to remember Marcus Fizer wasn't anything really his freshman year. He had to find where he fit in with this team. And Omaha, I think, has a very bright future with the Clones if, of course, he stays with the Clones, because he will have a starting position next year, if we're being honest.
Yeah, I mean, you just never know, right? Like, that's the world we're in now. Do you stick around and see if you can win that starting position, or do you? Because one thing we've learned from TJ for sure, I think, is I think it's around everywhere, honestly. But really, with him, if you can't do all the thing he requires, like they're not going to cater to you, right? You have to do the things, and you have to do them well. I mean, think about freaking Rob Jones. Like, think about the Rob Jones, like
Whew.
Iowa State only career trajectory. It was not pretty for a while. Not pretty.
And
It
he's
was
a huge
it
asset
was
this year.
loud. Yeah, it was loud around Bob Jones. Like people were not fans, and now I think everybody kind of likes him. Obviously, there's things he needs to work on, but I don't think people are like as loud as it was at the beginning for him. Now, I think he did pretty good.
A lot of people were hesitant on that Big Rob Energy nickname because on the court he was bringing the energy, wasn't always helping. But this year he's combining the energy as well as the play that he's on the stat sheet, and I think his game has improved. If there was such thing as the most improved player in the Big 12, I think that he would have that almost locked up right now, just because of how he's playing.
Honestly,
And I mean, hey, went 4 for 4 from the free throw line against Houston.
that's if he can
Probably
make
didn't
free
win
throws.
with those. Yeah,
If he can make free throws,
and I swear, like I think he's a good free throw shooter. It has to be off of a flagrant foul or a technical when there's nobody in the paint, because I think he made all his free throws every time that happens. So got to figure out how to get him at the line like that. But
just get everybody off the line for the first one.
Yes, and then go to the away coach, be like, hey,
Hey,
the
do
only
me a
way our
solid,
guy
man.
makes it,
Yeah,
do me a solid. But the last team that we really haven't hit on is, of course, the Iowa men's team. I really don't know about where the state is with this team. I haven't watched a ton of Hawkeye men's basketball this year. I mean, they've won games against teams that are decent. I mean, they beat Nebraska after Nebraska beat Purdue, so
Yeah.
that's something. It's not nothing. And then then they lose to Purdue 84-70 a couple days ago. So what are your thoughts on this Hawks team? Again, I haven't watched much of them. They don't look terrible. I still think that Perkins is still their best guy overall. But where do you think they're at? Do you think they're a tournament team?
I think so. I think the best way you could describe Iowa's men's team is they score so many points. Like they I don't think they can guard anyone, right? Their defense is very, very subpar. But when they do score, they win games. But if they can't score, they have a hard time. Like I think the best analogy, not even analogy, just think about the Iowa State game. Iowa State just clamped them and they just blew them out because they like. Well, let's not act like Iowa State's some offensive juggernaut, right? But Iowa State scored on them pretty easily, and Iowa couldn't score. So I think that is kind of the epitome of their season. Like if you had to circle one game, obviously there's other games you could look at, but I think that game really kind of shows you where Iowa was at, and I don't think they haven't gotten away from that, right? They play pretty good offense. They have a lot of offensive weapons. I'm pretty high on Freeman. I think Freeman's going to be a very, very solid player for them. Sanford can knock it down. Pretty good shooter for him. But like other than that, it's Tony Perkins. Like you got to
Creaky's
get
pretty good.
Kirky's decent, right? But you got to score, and they don't have that guy that they've had for so long. Where that was Garza, Wieskamp, Murray again. Like you had dudes that like there's 4 guys that are in the NBA or were G League, whatever, right? That went on to play at the next level. You don't have there's nobody on this team. Unless honestly, their only hope at a pro guy, I think, on this team is if Sanford got like Duncan Robinson, Kyle Korver type role, right? Like
Yeah.
that's going to be their only hope. But you don't have one of the Murray guys. You don't have Garza, who was like the best player in all of college basketball for a hot minute. Wieskamp, like so good. You don't have that. You don't have that type of guy on this team. And when you can't guard, it gets tough.
And okay, so I'll go out and say that Fran McCaffrey has had some good development skills with some of his players. Like you mentioned Garza, the Murray brothers, because those like I don't even think the Murray brothers were 2-star guys, right? I can't remember what exactly they were recruiting wise, but they weren't necessarily high up guys, and now they're in the NBA. So he can develop guys, but like in this new state of college basketball, that's really hard to like be like just a development guy. And I mean, he's utilized the transfer portal a little bit, but um I think over the next couple of years he's going to figure it out more and be able to get more guys because he was one of those guys that was completely against the portal anyways in the first place, and now he's realizing, if I want to compete with some of these guys like Iowa State who utilizes the portal a lot, I'm going to have to utilize it as well. And right now, they're the definition of offense wins games, defense wins championships, because they're not in any contention to win any kind of championship, in my opinion. But their offense keeps them in games.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you score points, you'll be able to hang, right? But the instant the ball's not going in the hoop, what do you do? How else do you compete, right? How else do you stay in the game? I feel like Iowa's a team that the ball's not going in, it gets real tough, right? To hang to win games. And, that's a tough way to live, especially in the Big Ten, Like you got teams that'll score in the Big Ten, but you also got teams that'll just play defense. And if they win 40-30, then they'll win 40-30, right? And Iowa just is not that team. And I think, honestly, too, I think Iowa, like Iowa Twitter, Iowa social media, Iowa fans are a little loud right now just because I don't think they don't really know what's happening anywhere, right? So I think it's just a state of uncertainty for them. The only certainty they have is women's team being solid, right? Everything else is a little bit up in the air.
Yeah. And I mean, shout out to the football team able to get Caden Proctor to come back.
Yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
getting a guy that started for Alabama as a freshman, huge deal. And
Yeah.
they don't even have
Yeah.
an OC yet, so that's
Right.
a good sign, and
Yeah.
that
And
may help an OC get feel like they should
also,
sign.
what does that say about like Iowa's recruiting? Right. I think that is, if you're an Iowa fan, man, obviously you're hyped that you got Proctor, but outside of just him, you literally like you would feel like you lost him right last
Mhm.
year, and then to get him back, I feel like that is such a good thing for your recruiting, right? You have to, I mean, dude, you have to be so trustworthy in your recruiting guys, especially after that, because he could have went literally anywhere. Like, there's nobody that's gonna say no, we don't want you because you were starting tackle at Alabama, right? Nobody's gonna say that. I feel like if you're an Iowa fan, outside of being excited that it's Proctor, you have to be so ecstatic with where your recruiting is at solely because he came back after all that happened.
Yep. And I mean, hey, let's be honest. If you want to be an offensive lineman that plays in the
Oh
NFL,
yeah,
go to the University of Iowa. And while it didn't happen the first year, I think if anything, it may have benefited him more going to
yeah,
Alabama first
yeah,
because now he knows what it's like to be in a locker
yeah,
room that's competing for a championship. Not that Iowa wasn't competing for a championship; they were competing for the Big Ten championship, but he knows what it is like to compete at the highest level. And even though he'll be a sophomore, that's still the leadership that maybe the University of Iowa needs on the offensive side of the ball.
yeah,
And maybe that will help an offensive coordinator feel like, okay, I feel like I can walk into this locker room and I know I got one guy I can rely on to be a leader from day one. And I mean, Kate McNamara will be a good leader as well. So that's two people right there that you can already bank on.
yeah. And I mean, Iowa's O line was a little subpar last year, I think, in comparison to their usual,
They have been the last couple of years, it
yeah,
seems
where
like.
they're usually at. But man, I mean, you get one guy can change a whole program, right?
Yep.
Not saying that Proctor will change the entire Iowa program, but you'd have a hard time thinking he wouldn't help you on the O line.
Yep, completely agree. And I know we don't talk a lot about the NBA. A little quick switch over, but I want to get your thoughts,
Oh
not
man,
necessarily not on what you think I'm going to ask you, because I know you. I think you want me to talk about the Bucks situation. There's a different situation I wanted to talk
I'm ready
about.
for the different situation.
I think the Miami Heat just made
Yeah,
the greatest trade
yeah,
this season.
yeah, dude.
I
I'm
So
excited.
they so for people that don't know, the Miami Heat yesterday traded Kyle Lowry, shout out Kyle Lowry though, championship pedigree, uh,
Love you, Kyle.
for a first round, and a first round pick, right? They
Yeah,
traded the first round pick
2027 first round pick protected.
for Scary Terry Rozier, who,
Boy,
in my opinion, is one of those guys that blew up early on in his career at a powerhouse team, the Boston Celtics, then signed somewhere else and just kind of disappeared, but yet played at still a high level of basketball. Now he's going to Heat culture.
and you keep in mind, Ted
I
Rozier's Heat lifer. 2011, Scary Terry's tweeting about the Heat.
so
Come on
I
home, baby.
like I so when that happened, I got really scared because I was like, oh, the East just got really tough because the Heat I think are going to jump up quickly in the standings because of this. But then another team made a different move that I'm not sure is a good move or not a good move, and I want to get your opinion on this one. And I know this is the one that you're probably expecting me to ask you about. The Milwaukee Bucks fire Adrian Griffin after going 33-10 to start the year in his first season as head coach. Then, not just that, then they go and call up who I think is arguably one of the most overhyped, overvalued head coaches in NBA history, and they signed Doc Rivers. What are your thoughts?
So the
Because you know
NBA,
my opinions on Doc
yeah.
Rivers.
So the NBA is tough because they you got to make the playoffs, and then it's kind of just see what happens. Um, Milwaukee, buddy. I Got a lot of Milwaukee people that I know, from living in Chicago or even from around here. Like, yeah, we got Dame and the Heat didn't get Dame. Yeah. Okay, yeah, we wanted Dame. All right, he didn't get Dame. Okay, buddy, you got Doc Rivers. Respect, like, first off, I think I said this last week, man. If you're the Milwaukee Bucks, what in the world are you doing getting rid of Budenholzer? Boy, I get it. You lost to the Heat last year. You didn't have Middleton. He was hurt. You didn't have Giannis. He was hurt. The Heat went to the finals. Buddy, you don't win championships left and right. Championship coaches aren't growing on trees. You're going to Doc Rivers, who won one championship with arguably years of one of the greatest teams ever anyone won. You had a championship winning coach who coached under one of the greatest coaches of all time in Popovich, and you won one. And you were going crazy. You had Deer District. You had the fans bought in. And then you had your best player who was fully bought into this guy. Giannis was in on Budenholzer. And then, sorry, buddy, you lost first round and you had your two best guys injured and you lost to the team that went to the finals. Yeah, you're out of here. What? That doesn't happen. There's a reason why. I mean, I don't mean to dunk on you right now, Milwaukee, but there's a reason why you have won one championship, right? There's a reason why. Because you do things like this. You get Dame, who is arguably the best player that you could have that was out there to get. And is a top 75 NBA player of all time. Great move. And now, in the middle of his first season, you had to fire your coach. And you're what are they in the NBA right now? What are they in the East? Like 2?
Yep.
So you're the second best team in the East and you got to fire your coach.
Yep.
What are you doing? How did we, if I'm a Bucks fan, I'm thinking, boy, how did we get here? And I'm not saying it won't work. Because Doc Rivers, man,
just
maybe he learned something. Maybe he learned something sitting behind the booth. I don't know. Also, we got to talk about that. That's a trickle-down effect of the century. What? I mean, how did we get here if you're a Bucks fan? That's what I'm thinking. How did we get here? Because championship coaches are not growing on trees, and we're just letting them go.
And this doesn't mean anything. I just want to point out that on Twitter, all I remember seeing in a row on trending was Adrian Griffin, Ime Udoka, Doc Rivers.
Right.
Right. And you can assume what the Ime Udoka trend was about,
right?
But and that's probably not the situation whatsoever. But no, I wanted to get your thoughts because again, you mentioned the Dame trade. This makes the Miami Heat's move of getting Terry Rozier for only Kyle Lowry and a first round pick look that much better.
Oh yeah, and think about, I think obviously in the moment you want Dame. Obviously we wanted Dame.
Oh yeah, anybody would have killed for Dame.
You're dumb if you say you don't want Dame. But when you think about it, the Heat probably imagine if you're a Blazers fan. I think if I'm a Blazers fan, I'm mad. I'm livid because Heat would have given you Hero, which I know there's a lot of Hero haters out there. Jaquez, who is potential second best rookie this year, third best rookie this year. Jovic, who's a player that has been starting for us for a while, like a first round. But you got dudes that are just sitting there. And I'm not saying you didn't get good guys from Milwaukee. But that whole situation just never made sense to me. And honestly, I'm a big, whatever happens, just kind of happens. Okay, this is my team now, right? You can't dwell on that too much. The Heat team that intrigues me, the lineup that moves me is Terry, Hero, Jimmy, Triple J, Mexican Jimmy Butler, Jaime Jaquez, and Bam. That lineup moves me. If I look at that lineup, I'm like, all right, I'll go swinging with that lineup. And if we lose, it's okay, I'll go down with that lineup because you got a shot creator in Hero. You got a shot maker in Terry. You got a guy who literally has the playoffs, who's Michael Jordan's son, Jimmy Butler. And you got the Mexican version of him, and you got an all-star in Bam. I mean, dude, that lineup moves me. I'm taking that lineup, and I'm seeing what happens. And if I'm the Bucks, like here's my thing. Budenholzer was not going to be better like than Spoelstra or Popovich, but Celtics, like I'm probably taking Budenholzer over Missoula, like in a
Oh,
coaching battle.
yeah. Oh,
Are
no,
you okay?
okay,
Are
wait a
you
minute, wait.
taking Doc Rivers over Missoula? Like if they match up in the finals and Doc Rivers has had this team for half a season? I don't
Get
think
it to
so.
game 7, man. That's all I'm worried about. And
Right?
for those that don't know, Doc Rivers has the most game 7 losses in NBA history as a head
Okay.
coach.
How hilarious would it be if that's how they go out? Game 7, your first season with Doc Rivers, you just pull them up off the freaking ESPN roster mid-season, and he loses you a game 7
If it
to the
happens
Celtics. To the
if it
Celtics.
in the
That'd
Eastern
be
Conference
awesome.
Finals,
Oh, that'd be awesome.
oh,
Oh, that'd be awesome.
yes,
I
yes,
would sign up for that. Oh man, I'd
give
sign
me
up for
that.
And
Oh,
I
that
don't
would be
mind the
great.
Bucks. I honestly don't mind the Bucks. Like, there's not many teams I just dislike. I used to not like the Celtics because I was not a Paul Pierce guy, but I really like the Celtics team. I really do. Like, the only guy that drives me nuts is Derek White because he just goes off all the time.
Because
But
he'll be quiet and then go like
yeah,
30, 30, 30, 30
yeah,
in a
like
row.
Tatum. I like Tatum. I like Brown. Like,
Kristaps,
like
shout out Kristaps for reviving his career there in Boston.
dude,
He fits so well in that.
that would like. You want to talk about a great move? I think we talked about it when that happened. It was like, okay, great move. Great move for the Celtics. Great move.
And I mean, hey, they got former Milwaukee Buck guard Drew Holiday as well. So, the storylines, man, for the playoffs right now, just from the last couple of weeks.
Dude, we're talking a little bit NBA here. We're talking about guys that don't grow on trees. Think about the Lakers, man. Vogel won you a championship.
Yep.
And where have you been since then?
I think they have their worst coach ever.
Bro. Hey, where'd Darvin Ham come from also? You don't got guys that grow on trees. You don't have coaches that grow on trees, championship level coaches. I could never, when they fired Budenholzer, I'm rarely speechless at the NBA. Like most of the things make sense to me. When they fired Budenholzer, I just could not make sense of it. And I get it at the time, right? You let a lot of recency bias get in there. But man, you just won a championship. Like, think about the NFL. If the 49ers lose, they're not firing Shanahan. There's a reason why Tomlin's still the coach. There's a reason why Pete Carroll was the Seahawks coach for 14 freaking years. There's a reason why Belichick had to go 3-14 before he got canned. You don't
honestly,
find those
he
guys.
Almost came back. It sounded like he was going to come back at one point.
And he's probably going to go coach somewhere else. Like, you don't find dudes like, think about the Patriots since Tom Brady left. If I'm not saying Mike Budenholzer's Tom Brady or Bill Belichick, but if you got a guy that wins you championships, you don't get rid of him. Imagine if the Heat would have got rid of Spoelstra after he won with LeBron, and then they had D. Wade, Goran Dragic, Whiteside, Rodney McGruder, and Deion Waiters. And if they said, nah, you're out of here. No, he's been to 2 finals since then. Because they haven't won, you're not going to get rid of him. That's what I think makes great championship level programs and teams. You stick with what you know works. You don't jump ship early. And obviously, like if you're Washington in college football and your coach leaves, well, okay. Can't do anything about that. But if you can keep them, you better try.
Completely agree. I'm still shocked that they fired Coach Bud and then fired Adrian Griffin so early. Something had to happen in the locker room that I don't and probably will never be released.
There were so many reports that like Giannis didn't like him or wasn't on the same page with him.
Why hire him?
Exactly. You better make sure your best guy likes the coach. Like, that's what I'm saying. And honestly, the Bucks could go win 5 championships in a row and be like, okay, whatever. But if they win a championship this year, boy, you better sign Doc Rivers. And I don't care if it stinks. You better sign him because you don't just win those. That's not an easy thing to do.
Man, I didn't think we were going to get an NBA subject today, but I appreciate that we actually got into that because that was great. That was an all-time. That was great.
That was an all-time soapbox for me, right there.
We're going to have to clip that for sure, especially if the Bucks end up winning the championship.
I just can't believe that. You don't fire a guy that wins you championships.
I mean, the Celtics did.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't win champion. I mean, there was also like other things that were going on.
There's a different there's a different level when it becomes, oh, you've had this great team for so long, and then how did he only win one with that team?
Yeah, I guess he didn't get fired. Well, I guess I'm talking about Doc Rivers. He didn't get fired. He got traded. He was going to get fired, if we're being honest.
Yeah, you know how awesome it is that you can just trade coaches though.
That's so weird. I don't understand that whole point.
Right.
Like, I want Doc Rivers for a first round pick. Deal.
Yeah, right. Or like, didn't the Broncos do that with Peyton or
I
did
think
they
they
not?
did. I think
I
they
can't
did.
remember.
I think they
I
did.
can't
But
remember. The fact that you could just be like, here's a first round pick for this
no,
coach.
I think that the Miami Heat, even though it's not happening the week of the trade deadline, made the greatest trade that will happen in the trading that will happen in the season, and I think we'll look back at it as potentially a difference maker in the playoffs. I don't know if that will lead to them making the finals again.
Right.
Hey, they made it last year with almost the exact same team.
Yeah.
So,
and I think, it's interesting to me, like, will they keep? Like, who will they run it back with next year? That's every team, right? Like, if you're building a team, if you're constructing a team, whatever, you're trying to figure out this year, but also 5 years. Like, in 6 years, if you're the Heat, is Jimmy Butler playing for you anymore? Maybe not, right? So how are you building that team around the guys that you have before that? If you're the Celtics, are you going to have the unicorn in 5-6 years? Are you like when Al Horford leaves?
Right. If they don't win this year, I legit do not know what they're going to do.
I mean, they're the best team in the league, right?
Oh, well, biased aside, yeah.
Yeah, I think them and the Nuggets are probably the top two teams.
Clippers, man, dude, they're figuring it out with James Harden. They're figuring it out with
James
Harden.
Think
I
about
dogged on them. I dogged on them for that James Harden trade, and now I'm biting it.
There's a reason why Ty Lue's still there.
He's a championship coach.
Hey,
if it's funny that you mentioned him in this Milwaukee Bucks situation because he was the guy that took over for. So who knows? He could potentially pull Doc Rivers can potentially pull a Ty Lue and win a championship this year, but I don't know. It's gonna take a lot. I really do think it's the Celtics East. I unless something crazy happens, I don't see them losing.
I don't see any team that matches up with them. Like,
I could see them losing in the conference finals. If they don't make the conference finals, that would blow me away.
Yeah, like the Heat are too small. The Bucks are big, but they are lacking without Holiday, a defender. Like, in theory, Holiday, he won't be able to clamp Dame.
No.
But he'll be able to guard him, right? Like, he'll be able to match up a little bit with him. I mean, Knicks are interesting to me because, like, Anunoby is like the ultimate Tom Thibodeau player of all time. Like, you can't almost prototype a better Tom Thibodeau player than Anunoby.
The Knicks are such a weird team because they're fun to watch. They're a fun team to watch, but like I can't tell if they're good, if they're building for the future. Dude, if they somehow find a way to get Mitchell at some point, then I'm like, I don't know if they'll ever be a title contender, but like they would be a team that would cause havoc in the playoffs.
And like, I agree. I think they could ruffle some feathers. I think they're okay. Who else? The Sixers, man. Maxi's a bucket. Maxi's very, very good. And Embiid obviously puts up 70.
They made a huge move by getting Nick Nurse.
Yeah.
I can't overstate that enough. I think Nick Nurse is one of the best coaches in the NBA. Hey, you mentioned it. He won you a championship.
Yeah.
And they got rid of him. Granted, the Raptors were in a different situation. They're definitely blowing up. And I don't think Nick Nurse wanted to stay around anyways.
No.
So
there's moments where it's like they didn't fire him after they lost the next 2 years, right? It's like, okay, we are going down. We don't have a generational player who is going to be a generational talent for the next 7 to 10 years. Yeah, we got freaking Siakam, who is now on the Pacers. Sneaky good move by them also. But
I think they haven't won a game though with him.
No, yeah, right. I don't think they've been like. I think once he kind of fits in, they'll be okay. But when they were playing, like they could be. They could maybe. I don't know.
They're going to be a fun team in the future.
They'll be in the future. They're a good team, like to watch. Like kind of go up and be okay. Yep. They're like the Kings, like a couple years ago.
Yeah. Oh,
But how about
go ahead.
I was gonna say, how about Embiid giving Wembanyama? I did not have that on my bingo card. Like, obviously, there's been some guys that have gave Wembanyama welcome to the league moment, but how about Embiid or how about Popovich saying, "Yeah, we're gonna hammer him." He goes for 70.
Have you seen the graphic though? So that plus Cat are
Right.
2 of the 3 games in NBA history on January 22nd to be over 60 plus. Cat had 62 on that day, the same day as Embiid had 70, but that is also the same day that Kobe Bryant put up 81. So
Love you,
if
Kobe.
I'm an NBA player, I'm circling January 22nd, going up to the coach and be like, just give me the ball.
Just feed me the rock. Feed me the rock.
If I'm Jason Tatum, sending that text out. This is for you.
No, dude, don't even get me started on that. Where was that text, bro? Where was the text like last year? Where was the text last year, man? Yeah, I know I had to get you with that one. You knew that was coming.
It's one of my favorite things. And, dude, okay. Getting from a different person's perspective, out of all of my teams that I'm a fan of, who do you think who would you say I put in the most passion for? I'm kind of curious on what you would say.
What are is Iowa State in there?
Iowa State is in there.
I don't know, dude. I feel like Celtics are kind of your bread and butter.
That's the one team that is my ride or die for some reason.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because I can't watch them every day because I don't pay for League Pass. I'll pay attention to them, watch it on ESPN, watch the graphic. Oh, he missed.
Yeah, right. It's like an X instead of a circle.
Yep. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. No, the Celtics, man, like if they ever win a championship, man, you want to see a fat man cry? Whew. The waterworks will be flowing. And I say that as a joke, but I'm not even kidding, man. I would legit bawl my eyes out if that
happened. Got a good chance this year. Honestly, that year they had the Warriors. I thought that might be your one, dude. I thought that might be your one.
That's what I'm worried about, man. I'm worried about I'm going to be 70, 80, and I'll be in like the retirement center, and I'm like, damn, I would have gotten that one championship against the Warriors. That was the one time.
That'd be awesome. That would be awesome. If you were there, if you haven't won one by the time you're 80, I would be mad surprised, especially with them just being the Celtics. Imagine if the Celtics go like 60 years without winning one.
Don't even bring that up, man, because then it will happen. I can't go through that much pain. I need just once.
You're not getting it from the Cardinals anytime soon.
Dude, at this point, I'm wondering who's going to get a ring first, me or the Celtics.
I guess we'll see. Maybe at the same time.
No, that ain't going to happen. No, the Celtics, that's my ride or die. The Cardinals are like a sideshow for me. I watch them for fun. I don't ever expect anything. I'm looking forward to the UFL, St. Louis Battlehawks, baby.
I was surprised it took this long for this to happen.
But I'm more looking forward to that than I am the Arizona Cardinals season next year.
Yeah, I mean, the NFL is a whole different beast. If we talk for an hour, but the one thing that makes me annoyed about the NFL, why do we reseed? Why do we reseed, man? What, like, imagine if you reseed March Madness. You got those teams that 16 seed never win anything. 8 seed, you never make the Sweet Seed. You're playing 1 seed all the time. What are we doing reseeding? Obviously, the Packers gave the 49ers a pretty good run. What are we reseeding for? It makes no sense to me. It makes absolutely no sense to me.
They were just hoping that the Cowboys would have won.
Yeah, it doesn't make. I mean, obviously that's the first 7 seed that's ever won. But I mean, you've had 6 seed. The reseed makes no sense to me because you're basically saying if you're the best team, you get the worst team the whole way. What? I get that the 1 seed in the NFL is like
if you upset the
1 seed in the NFL might be the greatest cheat code in all of sports in the playoffs because you get all the worst teams.
I honestly don't even know if I like the bye game.
I really don't. Me either.
I don't know because the Milwaukee Bucks and Heat thing last year, like that was so fun to watch.
Think about if the Bucks have a bye, they're all healthy. I get it. That helps you if you're the Bucks. But the whole point of the NFL, I will die on this hill. The home field doesn't matter as much as the week plus maybe one other week if you're so far ahead like the 49ers were. 2 weeks that you can rest your dudes. They still get guys hurt.
Yep.
It doesn't matter as much as having your whole
Debo
team
got
healthy.
hurt.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter as much as having your whole team healthy is 10 times the importance of where you play. You could make every game neutral field and nobody would care as much as who got that first round bye. If you took the first round buyout, nobody would care as much about home field.
So, speaking of home field, I was listening to a different podcast and they were talking about the Bills and Chiefs. And they're like, this game was built up to be the Jordan versus Pistons rivalry where Jordan finally gets the Pistons because everything is built up.
Yep.
They got home field advantage. It's Bills Mafia. So Josh Allen went from being potentially Jordan of making that step to being elite to now being LeBron James. Who knows? Maybe he needs to make a decision in a couple years.
Dude, one thing I can't get behind is like we can't put losses on Josh Allen.
It's not on him.
And wins on Purdy. Like they are not the same.
Nobody is going to talk about – everybody's going to put it on Josh Allen, but nobody's going to talk about the stupid fake punt that they ran.
Right.
What was it, 4th down and 4? 4th down and 5?
They didn't even get close.
That was so dumb. That was the worst play. That was not as bad, almost as bad as when the Cowboys had Zeke take the snap.
Yeah, and obviously that like just looked dumb. Like same with like the one where like McAfee had the fake punt where it's like, what are you doing?
Yep.
Like obviously the Bills like ran a fake punt. But dude, I couldn't believe that when I saw that. I was like, what just happened?
All right. We should probably get out of here.
We should probably get out of here. Brock's got stuff to do. But yeah, I don't know. This is the first episode of this. I think it's better. I'm sure people will hear about it, but that's what we got.
We'll be back probably at some point this week. Talk a little wrestling. We definitely want to talk about we're definitely going to talk about that Netflix deal because, dude, I think that is going to change the game of.
Oh yeah.
Like I get some people don't consider it sport; it's sports entertainment, but that's going to change the game of contracts for sports.
Oh yeah. People are not ready to talk about the future of WWE changing the landscape of everything that is sports.
People don't realize how much the WWE impacts the future. We got the WWE Network was the first network of its own.
Oh yeah.
And now we got ESPN Plus and all that stuff.
Shout out Vince. Shout out Nick Khan. Shout out The Game, Triple H. I mean, so I think we're going to do a Royal Rumble pod. So if anybody is absolutely hype about wrestling, me and Brock got you, Royal Rumble pod. But I guess that's all we got for this episode. We will see you guys next time, whenever that is. Make sure to check out our YouTube, everything we got now. So like, comment, subscribe. But that is what we got for this episode. We'll see you guys next time.